Systems, and then we're also a design builder. So we've done new school construction, major additions, renovations, more general construction type work as well. So we've got on staff, we have architects, engineers, project managers, controls technicians, performance assurance folks. We have a solar team, about 140 employees, and then our project experience, you can see 360 projects. Over $1 billion in project value. The majority of those are in Indiana. We haven't moved into some additional states, but it's kind of who we are. You know, we're very active in the ISBA conference association, as well as the superintendents and school business official conferences. You may have had our ice cream at the fall conference if you walked through the exhibit hall. But sole service or purpose really to serve Indiana schools. We do have a little bit of history with you guys. So in 2008, we conducted a district-wide MEP study. We updated that in 2015. And as Jane mentioned, we're wrapping up now, getting ready to start up the boilers, I think, this week. Some Connersville Middle School improvements, new boilers and chillers that you see kind of on the right side of the page there. So I'm calling it a successful project. Jane and Brian might have another opinion after we leave. But so a little bit of a history with you guys. So why solar? Kind of stating the obvious here, financially, you guys are hedging against future utility rate increases, right? Anything you guys save, you are going to reduce your electric bill. Anything you guys save will be put not into your general fund anymore, but your education and operations funds moving forward. And we can talk about the educational benefits. We've partnered with National Energy Education Project, so NEED, to provide school curriculum, not only as it relates to solar, but other renewable energy sources. We also have sort of web-based data and real-time data, I should say, production data from the solar system that can be incorporated into the classroom. And then obviously the green attributes, the environmental side of the solar system. So some of the three primary benefits. Why is it seemingly so much more popular now? The cost has come down significantly. So the last 15 or 20 years, you're probably talking 20 to 25% of the installation cost of what it once was. So you're seeing it a lot more. Same information, different graph, same story, right? Installation costs have come way down. As it relates to Indiana, legislation at the end of 2017, well, I'll back up. So investor-owned utilities, you guys are Duke Energy. Investor-owned utilities, so Duke, Indiana, Michigan, AEP, NIPSCO, are required to offer net metering to their customers, which is basically a one-to-one credit of any energy that you guys produce, right? So one-to-one credit. Prior to January 1 of this year, you guys had basically 30 years of that benefit offered to you up to a certain system size. Senate Bill 309 that went into effect at the beginning of this year basically cut that benefit in half. So now you have 15 years of net metering benefit, and it stops in year 2032, as you can see. Now, if you get a project installed in 2018, you get 15 years. Every year you wait, you have one less year of net metering benefit. So it was 30 years, now it's 15. If you wait till next year, it's 14, the following year 13, and then if you install a system in 2022 or after 2022, you're not eligible for that benefit. And we can kind of show you what that means from a cash flow standpoint, but now is an opportune time is kind of the point I'm trying to make there. Any questions on that? It's a very high level way to explain it, but okay. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan. He's going to talk a little bit about how solar works and then go into, did that just work when I said it? Yeah. And then he's going to go into some of the information that we put together for you guys.
Okay, so just I'd like to go over the basic components of solar. A lot of times we get people that look online and get things confused. So basically the solar PV, it's photovoltaic, it's producing electricity. You have your solar panels and your racking. That all comes into an inverter that inverts that power from DC current, like what you use to start your car, to AC, which just syncs in with your buildings and seamlessly syncs in. So you never see any flickering of lights or anything like that. Everyone always asks that, but you know, it just seamlessly works with your power, and any power you produce on site, you consume that. and then any extra, like Nick was saying, would go back for the net metering would be credited on your account. The process that we typically go through is to design a system. We first have the site assessment, which we've already done, preliminary site assessment, and even gone into some design work. Then from that, really, it's just, that's the design is really the kind of the longest period of time, because it's kind of where are we going to put it, how's it going to look, how are we going to get there from point A to B. Then we go through the approval process, the system installation, especially a ground mount system, what we're looking at here. It's pretty quick, looking at probably 45 days from start to finish, so we can get it in pretty quick. I'd like to say 60, but we try to push our installers for about 45. Then we go through a commissioning process, and that process basically is making sure the system's working properly. Kind of gives us a little extra room there too, especially depending on how it's financed. But again, going through the system, making sure it's working properly before you guys start kicking in any payments or guarantees. And the interconnection, and then also into the performance assurance, which is just basically making sure that the system is performing 20 years down the road, like we say, and what we project it is. So like I said, we're kind of in the design process now. What we use, again, I'll just do a really high level. We use some software that it's amazing now. What took 6-7 years ago would take me 2 or 3 weeks to do can do like an hour and a half now. But this is very detailed. It takes weather data sets from between 20 to 40 years, depending on which weather data set. So all of our numbers are based off of averages. So we'll take the average month, the best month or the best average month in that time frame, and give us the averages. And so what we're finding with the helioscope, we kind of cut it down a little bit too, so we're a little bit more conservative on some of our numbers. But so we always want to outperform on our systems. But we're seeing basically each year can be a 5% swing. So you're going to have some years that are cloudier or not. So you're going to have plus or minus 5%. Industry standard is about 10, but we'd like to cut that down as close as we can possible.
I have a question, sir.
Yep.
Sorry. Did you say it was going to be a ground-based system?
That's what we're looking at for several reasons. Basically, you have 3 different ground mounting systems. It's not even. You have 3 systems. You have like the carports, which you see, which are really kind of eye-catching and whatnot. They're the most expensive. So you see those typically on the east and west coast where the power is really expensive, so the paybacks are there. The reason being is you have the extra cost of material, and then you have the panels have to be flatter, similar to like a roof mount system, so you don't get as much production. So the same system, a roof mount system and a ground mount system, the same system size, your ground mount's going to get more power because we can angle it better for our location, our geographic location. So that's what we look at if we can. A lot of times, especially school districts don't want to put them on the roof as well.
And maybe you're going to get to this, but will that ground-based system be able to track the...
No. So I am a firm believer in the Midwest here, from what I've seen over all the years, is the tracking systems, what they do is they add more expense. They add repairs, annual maintenance, or semi-annual maintenance. You add moving parts. Yeah, you add moving parts. And a single axis tracker, which you see now, trackers are great for areas where we have a lot of sun. And for half the year here, we only have partial sunny days, or even during the summer, it's partially sunny. So you're really losing, whenever it's cloudy, you're losing that benefit of that tracker. But plus you're adding expense. And for school districts, what I found is a fixed mount system that is optimized to that location. Fixed mount, you don't ever have to new moving parts. You don't ever have to do anything with it. It's typically on a ground mount. They're angled enough that rain will wash them off if you need it. So really trying to make, especially for the facility guys, as low as an impact and do extra stuff as possible. So
maintenance free, basically.
Trying to be as maintenance free as possible, because at that point you're just electron flow. I mean, it's just moving electrons. There's no moving parts. So.
And maybe you're going to get to this, but what's the total power output that we could expect out of this?
This system is about 1,700,000 kWh. So you're capped out, because the net metering, you're capped out at 1 megawatt AC. So we design systems that are like about 1.2, 1.25 DC. We oversize the DC a little bit because we counted losses. And that's just normal. We don't want to oversize it too much, because then we can overheat the inverters and cause the inverters to prematurely fail. We like to have our systems kind of run optimally. And for the long term. Again, since this is a long-term investment, if it was a business that's looking for a short payback, then we might do that. But since we're looking for a long-term, maintenance-free option here, then we typically would do it that way.
What is a typical life expectancy?
Panels will have 25-year power production warranties. So that's the guaranteed power, typically down to like 80%. So we're gonna have, in our calculations, we have degradation in there.
Sure.
And just over time, it's gonna do it. We only used crystalline-based panels, either monocrystalline or polycrystalline, and those are proven. Those have been around since the 60s, and we know that those modules are still producing it in NREL and in Colorado now. So, we only use the crystalline modules, again, because they're proven long-term. Life expectancy of the panels now are 50+ years. So, it gives you a lot of options down the road as modules slowly get a little bit more power. Then, if once it's paid off, you guys made money. If you wanted to say you did add more to the, more consumption, or you could add more to the system, you can replace those panels and they still have a value in the residential market and stuff. We can get into that, if you guys want to move forward. But there's a lot of value long term down the road. The racking has 25-year warranties. The inverters we spec we're using now. The optimizers on the panels have 25-year warranties, and then the actual inverter itself has 10-year warranty, but we also put in our financials in year 21 a full inverter replacement, even though that's, not typically what's going to be seen, but we do a full inverter replacement, just so it's baked in there for you guys and as a worst case scenario type thing. But most inverters now, they're all solid state. Before, just a few years ago, they all had transformers, and typically if that would go out, you had to replace the whole inverter. But now it's all solid state, so if it's the circuit boards. So typically if you have an issue on something, it's a $300 circuit board, not a couple $1,000 inverter. So,
Thank you.
any other questions?
Just curious about the size of the panel field.
We're going to show you next.
Okay, thanks.
So going back real quick, to the production number you'll see, and that's what Ryan stated, the 1,720,000 kWh. When we talked about net metering, the benefit that you get from Duke Energy, you're capped at a system size of 1 megawatt. So the system size there, 999 kW, is basically a megawatt. So we have put in the largest system we can that you guys will still benefit from on the net metering side. And that production, that annual production number you see, the 1,720,000, that's about 60% of what your high school uses annually. So maximum allowable system size to still get the benefit is offsetting about 60% of your electrical usage at the high school. In that run. So cash flow positive in year one, so the utility savings minus whatever your financing payment is going to be still leaves you net positive in year one. And then the 20-year benefit and 30-year benefit. So 20-year benefit, $1.7 million, depending on how you guys want to finance it. Typically it's 20 years. And then, so after 20 years, you see the big jump in kind of revenue stream there once the system is paid off. And as Ryan mentioned, we try and be conservative. So in our cash flows, we've included the full inverter replacement in year 21. We've also included O&M, kind of operations maintenance money, and insurance money in that cash flow as well. So everything that you can possibly imagine is kind of included in those numbers. I view it hopefully as a worst case scenario kind of number. So go ahead.
And this is, again, Nick and I just went over this. This is just some high-level pullouts of what the very detailed financial analysis look like. But again, this is kind of what we're looking at as a system for you guys. So what we did from a design standpoint is we kind of look at we get feedback from the district. We also just kind of look at different possible other areas, the land that the district owns. So we have 6 scenarios that we kind of would like to just present to you guys tonight to get your feel and take of what you feel would be the best area to kind of dive into deeper.
And keep in mind, we didn't get your feedback before we put these on paper, so that's happening in other boards. It's like, oh my gosh, that's our football field. So give us your honest opinions, knowing that we don't know what goes on in those areas right now. So
but it gives you a good idea of the system size that would offset that. So, and you can kind of see how, again, these are all the same system size, but just placed in different areas. So this is option 1. And I don't know if that's something that would anyone has any major concerns with?
Practice soccer field.
Okay. 2, this is my engineer's favorite place because it was the closest to the building. So I was like, I don't think they're gonna like that, but he's like, oh, you got to put it in there. So, and he's like, that looks like the Death Star, something like that. He was kind of.
That's sort of on the softball field.
That's a practice football field.
Practice football field, yeah.
There, that's the land that you guys own. I think the ag.
Is that where the farm line is?
Yeah.
That's where the
front
field is, the
section.
front, the cornfield?
Your daughter's house is right.
Yeah, I know. Right there, thank you. You can send some of her power over to my daughter's house. It's much
Got an
appreciated.
extension cord.
Yeah, really.
So that's just in corn right now, or
Yeah.
it's not? It's a crop. Okay.
And that's, you know, those places are, from an expense standpoint, a cost standpoint, are probably going to be the lowest cost just because they're closest to the building. So we have less expense running with power from the field back. It's not a huge difference because we're going to have to step it up. We'd have to step it up anyway with transformers and step it down. But there is a little bit of savings, obviously, the closer you are. That's the fourth option, the field out, just to the east here.
Right next to the career center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out front
Okay.
here.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Okay.
This would be probably the highest cost. Again, it's not going to be a huge delta there, but it would be the highest cost just because of the 3 different fields we'd have to put in separate fencing for them all. And then there is some concern, I mean, we've worked a lot with districts that have up to, homes, and kind of budget in there some screening, some arborvitae, some just different things that help block those, but that's basically the same size that would offset. And then the last
Do you
one-
find you get much vandalism to your?
The only place we've had vandalism is Little Rock, Arkansas. So they actually, about a week after they put it up, because there's a walking path, kind of a self-made walking path, and about a week after they put it up, someone went in with bolt cutters and cut the fence just so they could walk through, and so that was so far.
Oh, so it is fenced in?
Yeah, so we do
Okay.
a 6-foot privacy fence, depending on where it's at.
Okay.
It can be chain link, we can do vinyl coated chain link. We've also done different screening before, we've done
Okay.
wood fencing before, especially in Illinois where they're very picky about what it looks like, so.
Yeah.
And then the final place would be just down in this field, just a big square that would probably go in pretty quick, but that's kind of the 6 different places that system size would go. And I didn't know if that's something that anyone has any
That's in
preference on.
corn right now too, isn't it?
And we've, like in Delphi and Oak Hill, both of those school districts, they had farmland, and some of Delphi was part of the FFA partnership, so they had some of their savings. I think Greg up there, the superintendent, gave them like $1,000 or something out of the several thousands that there were, tens of thousands they were saving, so to kind of as a benefit for the FFA, but that's kind of the 6 different places that we looked at would be, kind of offset, back off, but be able to keep everything at a nice cost efficient price point as well.
So you're saying the farther it is from the building, the more expensive it becomes?
A little bit, because we have to run more cable
All right.
lines.
But that one field above where this one is, that one was still within the cost range
Yeah.
of the others that were on the fields?
Yeah, and like I said, all of them are really close. Really just well, it's not working now. Number 5, with the one that was broken up, that's the one that would be probably, you'd see a little bit of difference.
Yeah.
The other one, yeah.
And even down maybe at the field there, like I said, when we have to step it up like that, in a project this size, we're not talking any measurable difference.
This is the one you were referencing.
Ryan, once,
Yeah, I like that one.
once
I
those
mean, I
are
don't
put
know
in
what-
and fenced in, weed control,
So all we do,
mowing.
so it kind of depends. So depending on what you guys might want to look at moving forward, if it's a field, then we're pretty much going in and installing these ground mounts, then it kind of tears up the field. And so what we'll typically do there is we'll come back with prairie grass. So, because the front of the panel is about 3 feet off the ground, it allows for drifting of snow and just
Right.
debris. But if you get prairie grass, it grows about 18 inches. It depends on if you guys want to still mow, if it's a place you already mow, if it's not, here obviously you wouldn't, so if it's kind of back off. Aesthetically, if you don't mind the prairie grass being in there, some places even are looking at planting like, some wildflowers and having it, a pollination place, but yeah, that's typically what we do. Now, if it's in a well-established grass area, then typically that grass will not be torn up as much. And so if you want to keep the normal grass there, you can either, one, just continue to mow it like you do now, or you could put, what a lot of guys are doing is putting on like growth prohibitive, like they put on football fields. So they're really, I think, putting on like twice a year, and then that way it really reduces the amount of mowing that you see. So it does save, if you don't mow it, it does save some expense of just using the gas at the time to mow that area.
And these panels are how far off the ground?
The front of them about 3 feet, and the back of them are about 10 feet. So there's usually 2-tiered like this, or we have 4 that are laying in landscape. They're both about the same size.
And how much, I don't know if it's square footage or how much square footage?
Well, it's about 3 acres,
About
3 to
3
3.5 acres a megawatt.
Okay.
Question on your, essentially your ROI here that you got listed out. You say your net 20-year benefit is 1.7 million. Does that include the net metering?
Yeah, so what we had to do with our financials is basically, we put in there a separate piece, so we say, okay, this system's gonna produce this much power, this is how much you guys are consuming. And we kind of run some numbers on the back end of that for monthly of how much we'd actually push back by that month. So in this scenario, we put in 15 years, you're gonna have the full net metering benefit, and then after that, that extra pushback, 15% or whatever it is, pushback would actually be at the wholesale rate. So we show that in the financials.
Okay.
It's not a full 30-year, it's actually showing what, the real numbers of what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, so we didn't address that. So after 15 years, once the net metering drops off, right now your consumption rate's 9.7 cents, I believe. So you get credited 9.7 cents with net metering. In year 16, that credit goes down to the wholesale rate, which right now in today's dollars, I think is 4.7 cents. So at 15 years, a little more lucrative, but you're paying the system down. And then years 16 to 30 is when you go through the wholesale rate. And I know Jane and Brian have seen that.
So when it actually net meters, I mean, that meter is spinning that dial, when these start to become into play, it actually starts spinning it backwards, is that
Yeah,
correct?
right.
Yeah, so it actually, okay.
So you actually will get, so typically what you'll see is in the summer, you're going to build your bank of credits, because that's usually where your consumption's lowest. But you build your bank of credits in the summer, and then that carries over, kind of like some other guys who always says, like the old rollover minutes for cellular. It just carries over into the winter, so.
That's what I was gonna ask, if you bank that, so that in the lesser
Yeah.
sunny
And especially what we
season.
try to do, especially like we did last year for some of the districts, they got them in right at the end of the year. The way kind of they financed it, we were able to push back those payments. So like 6 months. So they didn't have to make a utility payment or, I mean, a minor utility payment for your guys' sake. But the utility payments are obviously reduced, but the payment for the panels or energy from the panels is pushed back 6 months. So it kind of gives you a little bank there. Then going into the summer, you get your bank of kilowatts in the summer. So it really helps in the fall, being able to be ahead of the game basically on your budgets for your utilities.
Okay.
Are there any other budget savings when a business uses solar? I mean, for grants or for other measures, be it mechanical or, I mean, I don't know, just.
In the state of Indiana, there's really not
Okay.
a lot. There's a federal investment tax credit, but you guys can't take that because it's for just off your taxes.
Yeah.
Businesses can take that, businesses can take depreciation, they really have a leverage for it.
Okay.
But really with the fixed mount, ground mount system, we found that with the pricing utilities right now, as long as we can stay, my main thing was if we can stay cash flow positive, so it doesn't cost the district anymore, and they can save more and put towards stuff, and that's, for me, has been kind of like, okay, this is why it makes sense for schools. You don't have to allot any more money that you don't have.
Yeah.
But anyway, out of these 6, is there kind of a general, like, definitely nots and, or ones that you might say, okay, this is.
Apparently, definitely not 1, 2, 1 and 2. Looks like 3 is,
1 and 2 of practice.
yeah.
1, 2, 3.
I don't like 5. I don't like being there by people's homes. And 4 seems to be a little further. I don't know if we can use 3.
4 might be a location if this works out well
Isn't it
for
just
the
like right
career
back here?
center.
Oh,
If we
right out
broke
here.
the career center off of the high school, you can speak to it better, but right now they're all on one. And so you might gain another
Yeah.
1,999
Right.
if the career center were considered a separate location.
Then you could
So
do-
4, I'm not wild about 4 because of that, because if we like this model and we wish to do more, that would be closer for the career center. But if you don't think you're ever going to do that, then
Yeah, so as Jane was mentioning, that net metering benefit applies, it's per site or per meter. And right now, the high school and career center are on the same meter. If somehow you got those to be be separated, then you have an additional megawatt of solar capacity to work with to get the net metering benefit.
So if this is covering 60% now, and you had them 2, and you have the addition of the field house, you might cover 100%, theoretically.
How we doing this time, Jane?
So kind of the fields over there, and then would be kind of your guys' idea of.
One above this.
Yeah.
I don't like that. So 3 and 4 seem to be the most.
Mr. Jack, do you have any input as principal of the high school? And political ramifications from practice areas or ag fields or?
FFA background or not? Right there?
3's part of the current FFA
Yeah, that
ground.
one right there.
You like
Yeah.
3, even though it's used FFA ground? Is there other areas for them to use?
No. However, we may have local farmers who would donate a few acres for our FFA program. Who knows? We're going to be building, hopefully in the future, a new baseball field beside the one down at the bottom.
So that would use some of that corn ground possibly? That field down there, yeah.
This is right between Higher Praise and
So 6, you're saying could be a new site for a baseball field, and that's not part of FFA, correct?
no, this is right up here. is the-
I thought that was part of
They're both
FFA.
part of FFA.
Okay.
So eventually FFA could not have any ground then, it would be.
Well, why couldn't they have that other
Sports then.
ground? Oh, would you use, because you don't know that you would use all of that bottom field where the current picture is for expansion of the baseball, right? It wouldn't use that whole thing. What would prevent FFA from using some of that field?
I don't know how much space they need.
I don't either.
And I don't know how large this entire area is, how large the FFA area is, and how much they need.
Randy, besides, what makes you like that position better than the one down by the Career Center?
I don't like number 6 at all.
He likes number 3.
I like that,
Yeah.
just because I do like the Career Center position.
Number 4.
I do like number 4. However, the aesthetics of looking out the north side of this building, you're going to be looking rather,
No.
I don't know, it might hurt your eyes when you walk out the door. Depending on how they're
It's going to have a privacy fence around it, right?
Yeah, so you look at a fence.
I do like the Career Center scenario, and I like number 3 as well.
Okay. Well, we can kind of just
We can.
look at those a little closer then.
Okay.
And get some numbers. Just moving on, so all these systems come with their inverters, come with a web database and web, what kind of a front web page for you guys to monitor all your data. This can be done on your phone, your laptop. This is also what's used to incorporate into the NEED curriculum. This is very important. I feel from doing this for several years of schools, 3-4 years ago, we just put up kind of a TV and just kind of run some of the numbers off the system, and no one really knew what it was. It kind of was kind of one of those things where just as you go by it, and no one really understood it, so it kind of just became something that everyone would walk by. With incorporating into the NEED curriculum, the actually NEED program has trainers on staff that come train your teachers. There's different curriculum sets that have the tools that the students need. It basically just incorporates and helps make a really smooth transition for what we kind of call like the solar system is your outdoor classroom, that indoors, and basically helping with the behavioral change of the students. And it's not just on solar. They teach them all about different types of energy and where it comes from, and kind of educates the kids on that. Also, we do an energy challenge event that all the districts. We're going to do that in 2019, where all the districts will have the opportunity to have their classrooms. It's kind of like a 8th grade science fair, but it's kind of like a statewide energy challenge, where we're going to bring all the kids in together and kind of make it just a really nice, interesting thing for the students. Kind of bring it all together. So again, that's kind of what we really believe in. It's been very successful. We have several references now that just love this. It's really taking off. So I definitely suggest this is something that you guys would look into if you decide to move forward. And then finally, we just have our performance assurance, which obviously we're going to monitor this. It's through the Guaranteed Energy Savings process, so we got to make sure the system's working optimally for the 20 years. But like I said, once it's commissioned and working, these things without any moving parts, it just kind of just sit out there and just work. What we also do is what we also do is we'll do the monthly analysis for the production. On all our systems now, we're doing is weather stations. So you actually have a local weather station on site. If there's any problems or issues, we know, like, okay, this is how much radiance you're getting and how much the system's producing. All the systems that are designed, we design them modularly, so there's redundancy. That's why we have 30 inverters. We don't use one centralized inverter, where a lot of, you have some stuff go down and not even know it over the years. So we have all our inverters kind of monitor themselves, and it will send emails out to the facilities guys, to us, letting them know that there's an issue. Again, we do the 12-month electric reviews, and we just work with you guys and making sure the system, on our back end, we want to make sure these systems are overproducing what we say. So we're constantly monitoring on the back of that. Also, like we want to do is have controls, since they know you're building obviously already, kind of come in and optimize the building. So making sure some things turn on. If you're going to be using solar, and we want to try to have as much stuff, especially from a demand standpoint on your electric bill. We want to have as much stuff that's kind of kicking on when that solar is producing. So just going to go through your facility and help make sure that it's optimized to the solar system.
So how will it impact our maintenance guys?
It really, so far, it's not. I mean, it's again, from just a mowing standpoint, depending on what you guys do there. That's why, again, we just do it where it's, fixed mount, it doesn't really do anything. What we'd like to do, we have some O&M in there. There really is no O&M in these type of systems that are fixed mount. But what we still like to do is train your facilities, one or two of your facilities guys, that just so they have an eye. I mean, once the system's designed and engineered, there's just a checklist of different things that can happen. So typically what we'll do is we'll just have kind of a high-level check system with local maintenance guys, and then we'll can use a local contractor if that's who installed the system, the electrical system. They can be kind of the second coming in. But from a long-term, expensive operation maintenance contract, I really discourage that with anyone, because you're kind of just throwing money out there as it's in case something happens. But there's really, once it's commissioned and it's working properly, there's really, unless you have like a lightning strike or something like that, that blows out a bunch of inverters, there's really nothing that's going to majorly go wrong. So, and again, that's why we have the design it with the redundancy of the multiple inverters. So if you do have an inverter go down, your whole system's not going down. It's 1/30th. I think there's 3 inverters in this one, so there's 1/30th of your system is maybe down for a day or two before it comes back up, and not your whole system. So you're still maximizing your production.
Janie, what about insurance?
So,
we haven't gotten that far.
Yeah, so
we're just talking about whether you want to proceed or not.
Okay.
So far, we haven't had any of our districts. It's all fit under the umbrella policy. So we haven't had any of our districts have insurance that's gone up at all. So it just kind of fits under the umbrella. It's all, like I said, modular. So you have 3,000 small parts. So again, several years ago, insurance companies were kind of scared about this, but now they realize that it's not a $2 million system that's going down, or a piece of equipment that's going down. If there's an issue, it's multiple small pieces that are just a few $1,000s. So we haven't seen, again, it fits under the umbrella policy. We haven't seen insurance go up in any of our districts.
This is probably a really dumb question, but there are those who believe that big power lines or windmills disturb the environment around. People report headaches or, excuse me, other sort of maladies. Any stories of those kinds that go along?
No, not with solar. We actually had to do for a village approval. We had to go through a pretty in-depth study, and the harmonics, the noise coming from an inverter are basically, you don't hear them after about 3 feet. So it's like, a transformer that powers the house has more harmonics than the inverters do. And the glare, they're all very low glare panels. So you don't get that bright, the sun kind of comes in and it just disperses into them, so you don't get that. What you used to get is, if it's the right angle, you feel like you're burning your eyes out. So But yeah, it's all kind of aesthetic standpoint now, they've come a long way. But yeah, there's you know, our engineers, our performance assurance guys talk all the time. They're like, I think it's actually more environmentally friendly because you never see more rabbits and squirrels and birds, you know, like all, you know, kind of tucked in the fence area that's protected from the other animals. But so no, it doesn't really have any kind of effect like the wind turbines do, that vibration.
So just a quick overview of some of our school projects, 16 total projects, 22 megawatts. Once again, we're basically talking about a 1 megawatt system here. 58 million in total volume. We had a slew of schools kind of jump on this last year before the December 31st deadline. Some of these projects that have been installed, and I encourage you to go out and look at these if you have concerns about kind of reflection or things of that nature. But Greg Bryles up at Delphi, 1.67 megawatt system, ground mount. You can see they get the 30 years of net metering, so a little more on the net savings department, and they combine this with an LED project. We've looked into that for you guys. You guys already have somewhat efficient lighting. You have T8 lighting, Delphi had T12, so their payback was a little better. Michigan City Schools, almost 3 megawatts, and this is phase 1. I think they're planning a phase 2 kind of by the end of the year, early next year. Also a ground mount system. I think you can see the fencing around the system there. And then Oak Hill United School Corporation up there, kind of near Marion, Gas City, a 2 megawatt system. We've done projects in Westville, so MSD New Durham schools. We've done city county building. We've done some domestic water solar, IUPUI, a lot of schools in Illinois. We have some of the largest, if not the largest, solar systems and schools in Illinois as well. So we've done this, just to recap, we've done solar projects on the guaranteed savings side as far as the procurement method goes. We're the most experienced provider of guaranteed savings projects to Indiana K-12 schools. So those 300 plus projects I mentioned, $1 billion, it's kind of the same procurement method here with the solar system. Once again, my quotes on a successful project with you guys this past summer, and then the financials that I view as kind of the most important part of why this makes sense. And then you can get to the educational benefits later, but cash flow positive year 1, the 20 and 30 year benefits, and then your total installation costs on the bottom there.
What's the job completion if you were to start and then finish, how long would it take you?
So, great question. Here's kind of what we laid out as a timeline with the end in mind, that December 1st or 31st, 2018. Once again, that goes back to that 15 years of net metering benefit, which equates to somewhere around $185,000 to you guys in savings, and then about 5 to 10% of the net benefit for the life of the project by waiting till after this December 31st deadline. So we have panels purchased, not for this project necessarily, but we have panels purchased. So we would look for the approval of the location and authorization to proceed from from you guys, kind of at that next board meeting if possible, and then we could start really, we haven't designed it, we've just gone into our helioscope program and looked at projections for production, some areas where we think it might work, but we don't have a detailed design. So we go into civil review, final design, and similar to what we did with Jane and Brian on the Guaranteed Savings Project, we put together what we call an open book pricing spreadsheet. Once we solicited bids, we'd come back, review. There'd probably be 2 to 3 contractors in each trade category. Some of them could be local, we could invite local. And then we'd review pricing and they kind of sign on the line. So however long that process takes. But that's, I think, why we're here tonight is that December 31st deadline is, while it takes 45 days to install a system, there is some more work up front that needs to be done.
I think it's actually the 11th, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The 9th is the October meeting.
September, yeah, we meet on September 11th.
September 11th, but in
September
order
9th
to
is
be
a
done by the end of the year.
So those are kind of the next steps. Operationally, we still think we can get it done by that December 31st date, but that would mean some fairly quick decisions from your end.
And to maximize this extra year, it has to be operational by December 31.
Yeah.
Correct. And we have experience doing that with the rush from last summer. So So any questions, I guess, going back to benefit, financial, educational, any general questions on the, what I'm calling technology for Ryan?
So if it's the board's pleasure to proceed, I want to make sure we understand. You need an authorization to proceed along with a location recommendation from the board on September 11th.
Correct. All right, and then obviously if you guys come up with any questions afterwards, we'll send them to Jane or Brian. We're in touch fairly frequently. We'd be happy to send you a response. But thank you very much for your time, and we're kind of late addition to the agenda. So
Thank
we
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And really, the reason we're moving, Lori made a comment, this is pretty quick. We're trying to maximize, since the benefit was changed, that's why a lot of places jumped on at the end of last year. We're trying to maximize, if we want to go forward, to get that full 15-year benefit.
Could we just think ahead a little bit? Could we have Brian and Randy come up with a suggestion for us where they feel it would be best located?
And consider options, like, I would like Gabe to at least have an idea of what else he would do if that location was picked, because I don't want to take away field from these kids that.
I would absolutely, we work.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Any, say if we decide to go with option, I think it was number 3, which is the career center, obviously we would get Steve Duggan involved.
Yeah.
So, we work with those people to come up with a consensus, not just one person's opinion on where they want it to go, so.
Well, I would appreciate help from you guys. I respect you in your opinions, and you guys are going to be the ones dealing with it, so I'd like to get a recommendation from them and whoever else they feel they need to involve.
Also,
Sorry.
Since it's on our ground, do we have to notify any of the homeowners in the area of what we're doing? And are we concerned about any blowback from that? Or is it just our property, we can do what we want? Which if it is, that's fine, but the neighborhood over there, they might have a few issues, whether legal or not, it's because that's going to impact ultimately it might impact their property values. It might up them, it might lower them, I don't know. But when Leslie mentioned the thing about the windmills and other things, there's a lot of paranoia that can sometimes go on about property values in that area. And that aesthetically, even with a fence around it, is going to cause a fundamental change in that location. So I think we have to be at least cognizant of that. Whether or not they can do anything about it, I don't know. But I think it's one thing looking out at a cornfield, it's quite another thing looking out at 10-foot high panels.
Well, I'm sure Randy and whoever he talks to will keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fair concern, and I just...
Financially, are the payments, and how will that impact?
Well, based on what they've indicated before, what you do is most places will not use their cash balance to pay for the project. You could, because we're in good financial position. We could. What would happen is you would seek proposals probably for an operating lease. And you would take bids, which is basically like regular financing, only you don't have to go through the bond process or any of that. So you would probably take requests for proposals from local banks for interest rates for a 20-year operating lease for the solar project. And then those payments would be made out of the operations fund. And what they have said, there is savings from year one. So based on a 3% interest rate, which I don't think we'll get, I think it's a little bit. Yeah, we'll get better rates being a governmental entity. We are probably not going to get a 3% interest rate. But at that rate, in year one, our savings would be about $30,000. So what you do is you take, okay, what's our current usage and what are we paying in electric costs? That's X. Then it would be Y, what's your annual payment for the operating lease, plus Z, the electricity that you have to purchase. And so you compare what you would be paying for just electricity versus what you pay for the lease plus the electricity you have to buy to determine what your net savings are. And in year one, it's about $30,000. And then it grows from there based on factors of like, you're going to have increase in utility costs and those types of things. So that's where they get to the amount, over 30 years you save.
Right.
A large amount of money.
Where are the fees paid from for performance mortgage fees that they charge to oversee and all that? Where?
No, they said they monitor it every.
Yeah, I mean, they.
Yeah, part of that is on them as a part of the project because it's a guaranteed energy savings contract. And if those targets are not met, then they owe us money back. So part of that is built in to that. However, as with the middle school project, there could be some long-term monitoring that we want done, which could be done under a maintenance agreement, like we have with Johnson Controls for our chillers, that type of thing. So, and those would come from the operations fund if we would choose to enter into those. But their cost for the project, the management of the project, and the bidding and all of that is built into the number of that's the total cost of the project.
It's interesting, though. It doesn't sound like, maybe there are corporations around us that they don't handle, but I would think if there would be savings like that, other districts are going to jump in and get these solar panels. So why?
Well, Oak Hill and Delphi aren't that far
around us. That's kind of interesting. They're dealing all kind of north and all.
And our son is I know he said he gave a percentage, so they've looked into that, I'm guessing, in our area compared to these other areas.
Delphi is on NIPSCO, which is the most expensive utility in the state of Indiana. And it's obscene and absurd, the amount of money that NIPSCO charges per kilowatt hour, even on commercial buildings. My father's business had NIPSCO, and it was amazing. And they just don't do well, so it doesn't surprise me at all that Delphi would go, because it's a small school district. So,
but you'd think if there was other savings, more schools would get the solar.
I think the solar thing was very, very popular a very long time ago, and now it kind of faded out, and this is the new generation of that, and maybe the cost savings that people were supposed to get back in the day from solar panels, which were very popular back in the late 70s, early in the 70s at some point in time. And they just didn't pan out as well as people thought, so there might be that kind of idea about.
The upfront price was so high back then.
Yeah.
Now the price is so much lower.
Yeah, it was a very expensive investment, and they just didn't get the return on their investment that they expected. And there were a lot of maintenance issues back then too. So
I like the saving money. The real struggle for me is the 20-year operating lease. That's what I've shared with Scott.
Can you take $30,000 in savings and pay that lease off sooner? I mean, is that? Could you do that? I mean, if you negotiate a deal on an operating lease where you have no penalty for prepay.
I don't know. Probably. If you put that in the RFP.
So if you just pour the savings back in and
pay it early.
I don't like leaving the 20-year out lease.
Yeah, because I at the middle school, every time we talk about the debt service fund, I talk about how much I I understand why they did it at the time, because the property taxes to keep those rates lower. You know, it's a whole different world that we live in today related to the property taxes and the caps and all of that. But gosh, I'm going to be long gone before that's even paid off. I mean, it's 2028. So it was here when I got here, we refinanced it to save the interest, and it's still going to be here for a number of years. So when we talk about something for 20 years, it's hard for me to think that I'm making that type of a recommendation or a decision.
Do we, as a board, need another opportunity to get together and discuss this, a work session prior to the next meeting, or do you want to continue discussing it now, or do you want to just discuss it at the next meeting? Do we need other information before we can make a decision?
I think, yeah, I mean, I'm leaning towards yes. Because of the cost savings, and I would also like to know the details of the operating lease, you know, how that would work out, because you're right, I don't want to drag this thing out for 20 years.
And maybe you use some of the rainy day money to cut that lease.
Or I like the idea of the savings.
Oh, yeah. 30 grand a year.
Yeah,
That's money.
Well,
That's just the
it's
first
30,
Yeah.
then these are, preliminary. 63, then 104, then 150, then 200, then 260, then 324. So based on the factors that the utility costs are going to go up.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money just to leave on the table, so to speak. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I agree with Ann. I think that, I don't personally think, just as the gentleman said, that, the solar panels are going to have any kind of detriment other than aesthetics. Great question on the harmonics, the sound of that. But let's be honest, I mean, people in Connersville can get a little bit scared of things, especially when you see the 2.47, whatever it was, cost of that, and then we're getting ready to throw down $5 million on a house, and it's all we can service that debt, no problem, we'll be okay, and it's savings and it's something we need, no problem, but I'm prepared to have those discussions, or however you want. I'm prepared for that blowback, whatever you want to call it, because it's what's best for this community, and it's what's best for the school corporation, and obviously the field house is best for the students. And so I personally, just to kind of voice my opinion, I think that I'm for it for that matter. There are some answers like I'd like to know about the operating lease and just some different things, but for the most part.
Andy, we can write the specs for that RFP however we want. And so when we go out for those proposals, we can put a caveat in there that it can be prepaid at any time. So we can just include that as a part of what we want to be able to do, a $2.4 million project, repay back over 20 years, no penalty for prepayment, all of those types of things. We just include that, and then the rates they give us are based on that.
Oh, yeah, and I think a lot of banks are going to be negotiating for that. They're going to be, if you do local banking, I think they're going to fight for that's a pretty solid loan.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you need to meet again with more information prior, either an executive meeting before the next meeting or another time? Do people feel they need more information before being able to vote at our next meeting? Because this is moving fast.
I think we need more time.
I think we need more. I'm really concerned about the people in the neighborhood.
How do we do that, though? How do we?
Well,
We'd have to be in a public meeting.
We have to have a public
Okay.
meeting, and those are very, very high-end homes over in that area. And I'm thinking of all the blowback that we got from trying to get the windmill farm and so many other things. And this is going to create an aesthetic difference. And I think
if it's in that location, do you think it is? If it's in the cornfield, is it going to create the same type of concern?
I think if we put it any place, and I like those two areas, any place between where the back of the baseball fields is and Higher Praise, which is basically our land, I think it could cause some real concerns from the property owners in that area, and to go forward without having the chance to have them. And I think once they get the information about it and they see the savings, that's going to be really, I think they'll be okay with it. But I think to move in that direction without getting input from the people in this high-end neighborhood that are going to be impacted. Their property taxes are some of the highest ones in the city.
Could we have an executive, could we have a public meeting, follow it with an executive meeting so we could talk after the public meeting? Because we still, we could get input, but we're still going to have a discussion in order to then take that information and discuss between
That would
us.
still be in a public meeting.
Our discussion would all be within the public.
Yeah, we need to contact our
Some of these
businesses.
locations won't even impact
No.
property owners.
No, not at all.
But as long, if
This one.
the
Well, I think some of them are really out already. The one that goes around here
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all of those homes and the
Practice
fences.
fields
That's,
out.
those are just
Well, the
out.
ones that take out the football practice field aren't gonna be very good either.
Well, if I could chime in.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
Trying to think of the ones I've seen.
What we're calling the practice football field, so that was option number one.
Yeah.
It's been communicated to us that the football team will not use that field because it's rough and they don't want, to someone to turn an ankle or something like that. So if we get into, where neighboring people are talking about the aesthetic portion of it, I think option one is definitely a viable option for that because that's not impacting anyone's, a property value or anything like that. So that's one thing that Randy and I were going to start discussing with people.
Option one is the soccer practice.
Practice soccer field.
You're talking about the practice inside the circle, right?
No, inside
No.
the circle is.
No, you're talking about the one over. by-
Option number one, directly
One is
behind
on
Magic
the
Mountain.
side.
Oh, okay.
That's that hilly area that goes into the.
Inside the circle or outside?
Outside.
But isn't the football field inside the circle?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
We're
a
talking
practice
about
soccer
two different
field.
there is a practice football field that has actual football goals north of the career center. That's not within the circle.
That's what they use it for soccer
That's
practice.
south of the
currently,
circle,
right?
and they do sometimes use it for soccer,
Sometimes.
sometimes.
So is option 4 just higher up than that?
Option four is straight out the front door here. It's right out here.
Right.
Is that, if it's gonna take that much acreage, is there really that much there?
The field here?
Yeah.
It's, look at option one, they've got it fit in there.
Okay, well, because it just, from bird's eye view, it just doesn't seem to be that spacious, but if it is, it is.
So how about we do this, just a suggestion, how about if we let Brian and Randy get some feedback from folks and make a recommendation to us, to Janie, to cabinet, and then what we could do is we could have, we're moving on a timeline here, so first the board needs to decide, do you want us to go forward with trying to get the maximization of this? Because this is going to outlive, I know mine and Janie's, maybe not mine, but our tenure probably here.
The man with 9 lives over there.
But it may outlive all of our tenure, for years. So we're really looking, when Janie brought this to me from Performance Services, it's just like the field house, we're gonna pay that off aggressively in 7 years. I like Andy's idea of, if we could set it up the way Janie thinks we can, then we can pay it off much sooner, because I don't like leaving that 20-year lease out either, if we can help it, but, so if we get their recommendation, would you want us to maybe invite these gentlemen back and have a public work session? It's going to be pretty quickly, so it'll probably have to be within the next 2 weeks. Are you okay with that? And then Cindy coordinates a time to get that on the calendar with you all?
I want to say something if I can. On the surface, I think this is a no-brainer. Saving money year by year. On the surface, I think it's no-brainer. My 2 concerns is what we've talked about. Stay away from the residential areas and don't take privileges away from kids.
Right, and that's why if we use the cornfield, I'd want to know what's going on with Gabe's kids. And if we're going to use practice field, but they're not going to use those anyway, if there's a problem with those fields, and we're not planning on turfing those, so then that may not be a takeaway from the kids. And that's, I think, their job to help us determine, right?
And as far as the public is concerned, I don't know that it would be an agenda item and the public has a question on the agenda item. I think we need to do a really good job of promoting that and letting people know through either the newspaper or through any other media that this particular thing is going to be on the board agenda.
But we're gonna, he's talking about a work session prior to the meeting.
Okay.
In early September.
Yes.
And that would be a
But
public meeting.
you're really, if you want a work session, a public work session, and we want this on the September agenda, you're really looking at next week.
Yeah, because of advertising and everything.
Well, because, all right, it would be, if you did it next Wednesday or something like that, because that's the last week of the month. And then you have Labor Day on the 3rd, and the board packets have to go out on the 6th. So something we would, if you're gonna act on it at the September meeting, it would need to be in that board packet that went out on the 6th.
So I see you are talking about next week.
So that, I mean, just in my mind, I'm backing that up. If that's the board's pleasure.
If everybody else
really
can do
consider
their
it in
work, I think we
September.
need, I mean, I do think we need to have these guys come back with information. And I don't know if, you know, Janie could probably throw together an RFP and explain what that would look like, or I don't even know if you could, what you would be presenting financially at that meeting. Probably nothing much, or.
Yeah, because we would go with their number, the RFP would be if we would be taking requests for proposals for the financing at the same time you're taking the bids, if you will, as performance service. That doesn't mean you can't say, no, we're not gonna do it, because you're still gonna have to approve the financing, and you're still going to have to approve the project proceeding. But
How did this come about now? I'm just curious, like, you know, it's almost September, it has to be done by December and all that. I mean, how did this come about, or who instigated, or?
I brought it up a few meetings ago. I've been watching just the areas. I mean, you go to the airport in Indianapolis, they're going up everywhere. Now over at I-70 at 40, they're going up. At Newcastle, they're going up. Randy has mentioned to me about the high school, how much we could save just on that one facility. And like I said, I think on the surface, it's a no-brainer. But I like the concerns that everybody has brought up.
I think when the city proceeding with the project, it brought a new lens to it. You know, a few years ago, the big talk was windmills. And should we be considering a wind turbine? So.
And I think too, you got, you know, obviously if we're done by December 31st, we get the full 15-year benefit.
Right.
But if we don't have enough information or we don't have enough time, we can still get the benefit of this long term. We're just losing 1 year of the net metering. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. So it's not December 31st or that's it.
Yeah, we would get 14 years as opposed to 15.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So-
And again, I'm not interested in driving this ship necessarily, because 20 years is a long time. And even if we pay it back, you know, with all of the savings, prepay it, it's still gonna have a pretty long payback. But, and as you say, it's kind of a no-brainer when you look at the savings. It's just risky, and
Well, I agree with Lori. It's like,
Conservative.
you know, the rest of them, we need to do our due diligence. You know, if we don't feel like we have enough information and confident enough to make a decision on September 11th, don't make it. We'll just burn down a year and we'll say, we'll revisit this in, 2019.
And that's my preference, but we thought we would be remiss to not at least, you know, Randy's talked with me about some ideas. I mean, so it's been on before. I talked with Harold Gordon about it, and, you know, so.
Well, I say that we set up a meeting.
So let's, you know, looking ahead, we have Labor Day coming up. Next week is going to rush it. One option I'm going to throw out is the 4th, which would be the week prior to our regular meeting.
Amanda's delivering a dog.
We can't do it on the phone.
We can have a meeting, but you're not coming.
You'd really like it to be next week, because you don't want it right after the baby's born either.
The solar baby, yeah.
Just meet at the
Next week,
hospital.
every day except for the 30th.
Hospital has a boardroom, you can meet there.
Right, that'd be great. Amanda would love
So
that.
we want to look at next
Love that.
week.
I think we don't have a choice.
We need to advertise, if we're going to do it, say, next Thursday, we'll need to get it advertised. Do you want to look at your calendars and let Cindy get feedback from
What's
you?
the date?
What time on
Thursday's
Thursday?
the 30th. I don't have my.
Amanda has last hospital or
have a-
doctor's visit. I'd be back in town probably around 5:30.
On the 30th?
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know, I am still a paper and pencil person, so I have to look at
I have to
my
look at-
calendar.
I have to look at mine.
But I think I could probably do 5:30 on Thursday.
Yeah.
Or
Thursday
6.
or Wednesday?
Yeah, 6.
Thursday.
Six would probably be
6
better.
would be better.
That would be the
Yeah,
30th.
March.
Yeah, right now that's looking okay. I
August
don't
30th.
think I have anything, but I'd have to confirm with you. And if it was a consensus and I was the only one that couldn't.
So we're going to tentatively say the 30th at 6.
Yeah. Is that gonna be any problem from your end, Randy, getting together with your people? Okay.
Essentially just
While they're checking on some dates, if everybody's okay to move on to Janie's budget hearing. Yeah, we've really taken more time than you want. You know, I'm happy to do the budget workshop presentation. This was relative to the budget, but you know, if it's the pleasure of the board, we do not have to go through this whole presentation. I can give you a copy of it, of my PowerPoint. You have a copy of the budget. I mean, I want to do what the board wants to do, but be respectful of your time. We thought the other would take about 15 to 20 minutes, and it's an hour and 15 minutes in, so. And I can do, you know, if you wanted at the September board meeting, I can do that as the presentation relative to the budget, because we have to have the hearing then. So I want to do what the board's pleasure is.
I don't have a problem being here, and my client canceled for 6:15, so that's why I'm still here. It's up to everybody else what you want.
Randy, you
We were going to take
know what
15
we're
or
asking
20
you to
minutes
do?
for that, and it's an hour and
Basically-
15, so I don't know.
How much is it gonna affect kids, where we go and what side?
Talk to Gabe, Brent, soccer coach, football coach, and Mr. Duncan at the Career Center.
You've already got it figured out.
Just found out about this last week.
Randy, if you and Brian meet with those individuals, I'd like to participate in this, please.
Okay.
Okay, so what's the board's pleasure?
I say we're here, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
All right, when somebody goes like this, that means wrap it up.
I thought that meant round up your wagons, I thought that's what. See you.
Wrap it up, it's Tenderloin Tuesday.
You're making me dizzy, Jane.
There we go. So we're going to talk about the budget this year. Again, I'll probably try and put some speed on it. One of the things that we wanted to talk about again is this ESSA, and beginning at July 1, how now our budgets are built, or our account structure is built with the 4-digit code for each location being in there. That's included taxing funds, the state and federal grants, so you have all of these costs that are now listed for every building. So, kind of looking back previously, our general fund was about 29 pages. Our financial report are about 1,500 accounts, capital projects, transportation. So in total, we have about 1,900 accounts. Now, as we move to the education fund and the operations fund, we're going to have about 3,400 accounts. That doesn't even include Title I, Head Start, Special Ed, all of those. So our financials are huge now. We're killing a lot of trees. So going into 2019, the big change was we used to have these separate silos: general fund, capital projects, transportation, and bus replacement. But now we basically have two. We have an education fund and an operations fund. So the education fund will be all expenses basically related to student instruction, athletic coaches. It is student technology or digital devices or smart boards. That used to actually be in capital projects. That will now be a part of the education fund. The staff that supports those items was a part of the capital projects before. That will now move into the education fund. In January, we'll transfer the balance of the general fund into the education fund to start it out with the cash. The operations fund, it carries out the capital projects plan. It pays transportation costs, it pays bus replacement. It's expenses that are allocated to overhead and operations. For example, all of the board salary, all of the central office staff functions will be a part of the operations fund. It also is the maintenance and custodial staff. So those used to be part of the general fund, they will now be the operations fund.
So when you switch over the general fund though, the money in that general fund at the end of the year has money in it for maintenance?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
All right. So it's always been above 90% of our general fund revenue came from student funding sources, the basic tuition support, the tech, the complexity index, special education, career and technical programs. But now 97.9% of the revenue comes from that 1 student, 2 student, 3 student funding formula. The balance of it basically comes from summer school, adult basic education program, and the performance pay awards, that the TAG grant, if you will, Teacher Appreciation Grant. Again, just a reminder, that has to be paid, I believe, within 20 days of receipt of the proceeds, and highly effective staff have to receive 25% more than effective staff. Now, last year, the board agreed to make everybody whole and to pay the same amount, but per the grant and per our policy, we have to have that 25% differential for the Teacher Appreciation Grant money proceeds. So this is a slide that I show every year to show our decline in enrollment since 2008. So over the last 10 years, we've lost, this graph shows 637 students. However, if you look at the footnote, until 2015 or 2016, kindergartners were only counted as a half. So if they were a whole at that time, we've actually lost 148 more students. So in 10 years, we've lost about 800 students. At $6,600 a piece, that's a whole lot of money that we would have today that we do not because of our declining enrollment. These are our estimated general fund revenues. Again, as I said, the majority of the money from the general fund was the student participation programs and those other funding sources related to students. We did have other revenue sources that flowed in there, but the revenue is staying fairly consistent in recent years, even with this change to the education fund. The operations fund revenues come from the property taxes, the license excise, the commercial vehicle excise tax, financial institution tax, and transfers that may be made from the education fund. So, to speak to Leslie's point about the proceeds or the balance of the general fund, there will be several transfers and resolutions that have to occur. First, the board will be presented with resolutions to establish the Education and Operations Fund. Then we move the general fund money into the education fund. Then you move the CPF, transportation and bus replacement money, to the operations fund. Then you make an initial amount of money to be transferred from the education to the operations fund for January to March of 2019 anticipated expenses. The amount of money to be transferred from the education to the operations fund will be on a timeline-specific basis. So every month or every quarter or semi-annually or annually, we will need to transfer money from the education fund into the operations fund. Right now, I have the resolutions written to do that on a quarterly basis. Those will be presented to you for your consideration.
The state leaves that up to us?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lucky us.
Yes.
The state.
Well,
Thank you.
what I've done is I've tried to bundle all of it together. So the establishing of the funds will be presented at next month's meeting, prior to the budget hearing as an action item. Then the resolution to transfer the monies, the December 31 monies, and the monies from the education to the operations fund, and then the recurring transfer will all be presented as a part of the budget packet, those resolutions for your consideration in October. So basically, we kind of button it all up as a part of the budgeting process. You can make changes to those, though. I could bring you new resolutions if we needed more or less money in 2019. You can do transfers from the operation fund to the education fund if you needed, but those would only be done on an as-needed basis. You can transfer to or from the rainy day fund as needed. You could have resolutions for additional appropriations if they were needed, and amendments to the capital projects and or bus replacement plan if needed. So we could have a little bit more paperwork, at least, getting these budgets established annually. One item I always concluded this is our historical net assessed valuation. It's an estimate for 2018, and most likely will go down after some appeals are heard. So if you'll notice down here, the per acre assessed valuation of farm ground continues to decline. In 2018 for the pay 2019, it drops to $1,610 an acre. I used $680 million for the assessed valuation in developing the budget. The reason I do that is you're always told to advertise a higher rate. So we advertise the higher rate. By the time the DLGF works our budget, they'll have a better handle on what our net assessed valuation is. They are not going to give us that higher rate just because we ask for it. They'll give us what we need and what we're allowed based on the growth factor. Debt service, that debt service fund remains the same. As you'll notice, the QZAB is now paid off as of June of this year. Common school loan for technology will be paid off in December 2019. The Q-Scab will be paid off in December 2020. The CMS lease continues through December 2026. The general obligation bonds that were issued last year will pay off in 2021. And then we have the common school loan for the high school. We haven't drawn down any money. We have to draw down 50% within the first year and the balance within 2 years. And the payments for that must start within 1 year after you do the final drawdown. So what I'm hoping to do is drag it out almost all the way to that 2-year mark for the last drawdown to keep our payments out to this period in time, 2021, 2022, where we have capacity and it impacts the circuit breaker, the other taxing units, and the individual property taxes the least.
How would those, reduction of those payments, let's go through 2021, we'll skip out on the CMS thing. How will that, and then the addition of the loan payments for the common school loan, does it even out? Do we still come out ahead? And is that money that we could say, oh yeah, so we've got a little extra now that we're not paying out that we can pay towards this lease on the solar panels? Saying that we're not going to be paying on 3 of those by December 2021.
You can't use the debt service fund to pay for that operating lease. That has to come from operations.
Okay.
And besides that, Leslie, you're going to have projects that have to be done. We
keep
always
coming
talk
in,
about
yeah.
keeping our debt consistent. You're going to have some building maintenance issues. We've got old buildings. Now, I'm
Yeah.
proud of the work that we've done
Yeah.
to keep them up, but there will always be, there's always
Okay.
going to be payments. And
Yeah.
so, no, you
Things
cannot
are going
increase
to
the
break.
debt service for an operating lease. That must come in the
That's
past
right.
from your general fund or capital projects, but now it'll just be your operations fund. In addition to that, every year we add the amount of the unreimbursed textbooks from the state, plus anyone who qualified for free textbooks after the cutoff for the state payment. This year, that amounts to $126,417. We also, it just built in, we haven't used it for several years, but a temporary loan interest, just in case they would not be able to issue settlement on time, we had to borrow, we would be able to have a place to pay the interest on that
I
borrow.
remember a time we had to do that. I remember a time we had to do that. I think it was before you came.
Yeah, probably everybody was borrowing when they went through that whole reassessment. It's about 2008, 2007, everybody was borrowing because you weren't getting settlement. If you were lucky, you got it by December of that year, and most places it crept into the first quarter of the next year, so. We also have some administrative fees related to the bonds. We're required, if you remember, we have a law due continuing disclosure document for us. We have that. We have some fees related to bond administration, the trustee fees, if you will. Here shows our debt over a period of time. You know, in the last 8 or 9 years, we've been real close to $1.8, $1.9 million in debt service appropriations. We also have the pension debt service fund. That's 1 more year. We have 1 more payment in January 2019 on those pension bonds. Again, they are required to be levy neutral. As we don't have other funds, the separate funds, we will now be required to do that, satisfy that neutrality out of the operations fund. So we did refinance those a few years ago with an $87,000 savings in interest costs. So capital projects fund changes. We used to be able to build utility allocation of $847,117. It had been that amount for years and did not change. Well, all of the utility costs will now be a part of the operations fund. The good news is, on that $847,000, we now get the growth factor. So whatever they tell us we can increase our budget from the year before, we get that on this $847,000. We did not previously. It was capped at that amount and it never changed. The sports facility was limited to 5% of the capital projects fund budget, which was approximately $150,000. It'll now be limited to 2.7% of the property taxes levied for the operation fund. I'm thinking it's probably going to get them about another $15,000 a year for athletics.
It's about $165,000.
I think. We'll see when they work the budget where it actually ends up. Guys, you know, this is the most uncomfortable budget I've ever built for monies to be allocated to the right account. We had the whole ESSA factor where we had not tracked expenses by building, and we're now tracking them by building. So I didn't know exactly what each building spent. I didn't know what they spent for their Social Security, their life insurance, their health insurance, all of those accounts. We had one account for elementary guidance supplies or elementary guidance travel. That now had to be broken back by building. So I built the budget. I compared where those categories for instruction, the total last year versus the total this year, to try and make sure I was in the ballpark. But if anybody grabs a copy of the budget and line by line looks at it, some lines are going to be way under and some are going to be way over. That's what it is. So,
Your best guesstimate?
yeah, I mean, I hope it's an educated guess,
Yeah.
but it's still a guess. So, capital projects. Previously, it was a 3-year plan. You had to publish it in the newspaper. Now, technically, what the capital projects plan is items costing $10,000 or more must be in the plan. That's any one item costing $10,000 or more. The plan that I have put in your board packet under that section identifies those items that are $10,000 or more. It also identifies capital projects, but it also gives you an idea of the allocations that I'm making in the education fund for technology purchases at the building level, and then also general equipment purchases at the building level. For me, I wanted to make sure that everyone was taken care of still, and the way to do that was to put that in that document and make sure. So our capital projects plan that I've developed exceeds the requirements of this state. So you'll see items that are not $10,000 or more in there. Plan amendments and the plan have to be posted on the website. So what gets advertised in the newspaper is a little blurb, not a paragraph, that says, hey, if you want to see our capital projects plan or you want to see our bus replacement plan, you need to go to the Fayette County School Corporation website. And down the left-hand side, Cindy has posted those documents out there already for me. So you click on that link and people will be able to review our plans. If there's something not in our plan that's $10,000 or more, I will have to bring that to you for your consideration at a board meeting. There will be things, the capital projects plan had to be site-specific previously. So I had to say, we're going to do a boiler project at Eastview. That money could only be used at Eastview. In this plan, I have a line that says, hey, we're going to do boilers and chillers for X number of dollars. That's a corporation-wide number. It's no longer building-specific. But again, if there's an item that's not listed in there, then I have to bring that back to you for your consideration, and we have to post it on the website that you're considering an amendment to the plan. So in some instances, the handcuffs have gotten looser. We have more flexibility by the funds being added together. But on the other side, there have been some tighter handcuffs in that you have to seek these approvals for these type of items. Vehicle purchases were not allowed in capital projects, but they are a part of the operations. So when we bought a truck for maintenance or transportation, a truck for the transportation guys, that could come out of transportation in the general fund. Now both of those would actually be in the operations fund and would be required to be identified as a part of our capital projects plan that we intended to buy vehicles. Again, the instructional technology piece moves to the education fund. The transportation fund, it just doesn't exist. It's all of it is now rolled in to the operations fund. The bus replacement fund, that's where we used to purchase our buses and minibuses. It's part of the operations. It's now a 5-year plan instead of a 12-year plan. It is not advertised in the newspaper, just the blurb is advertised in the newspaper, and you cannot buy buses from the education fund. They can only be purchased from the operation fund.
Does that, how does that really impact the difference between a 5-year and a 12-year plan? Is that a big impact? No.
It is not. It's just, basically on a 12-year plan, you were showing when you were going to replace your entire fleet.
Right.
Because they're supposed to last. They're supposed to last 12 years because somebody at the legislature thought they should. It used to be 10 years, which was more realistic. However, we have buses that drive large areas that put a lot of miles on them. And sometimes the city buses don't have a lot of miles, but they're doing the stop and the start. So.
It's a different kind of wear and tear.
Correct. The rainy day fund, again, is subject to the same appropriation process as the other funds that receive tax money. You can transfers can be made from the educational or the operations fund to the rainy day. You cannot transfer from debt service, and you used to not be able to transfer from bus replacement. So theoretically, with the bus replacement being part of operations, if you have savings on replacing your fleet, that actually could be transferred to rainy day now, because it's no longer specifically identified.
Which could be helpful.
A new release of the handcuffs in 2019 is that transfers can be made out of the rainy day fund. Previously, everything had to be built into the rainy day fund budget, but under the new model, you can spend from the rainy day, you can transfer from the rainy day to the education or the operations. My preference right now is to continue to budget for those type of items within the rainy day fund. They lose their identity of what we spent the money for. If there's an inquiry, what'd you spend the rainy day money on? Now I can run a history of that and be able to tell. If we start transferring it back, my concern is I lose the ability to identify that. What did I put in there? Same old thing I used to. Always have some general fund bridge payments. We're slowly working our way through the bridge payments. Additional technology staff if we aren't able to fund it from education or operations. Circuit breaker impact to the operations fund. And it's a source for education fund expenses should we need, if we have reductions in those revenues that we're not anticipating. Any questions? I did it pretty quick. Tried to.
Good job, Jean.
Good job. So you have two big accounts, but now we have 3,400 small ones.
Just because you have to track everything by the building level.
So you don't have to buy it by the building level, you just have to track it by the building level. For example, if you buy, it sounds stupid, but by paper in bulk, you have to keep track of how much each school spent on
Paper?
That came from each school's budget anyhow.
Okay.
But it was never reported
Okay.
to the state.
Okay.
That the middle school bought this much paper.
Yeah.
And the high school bought
This much paper, or the elementary school, okay,
Correct.
okay.
And tell me, they're really going to be looking at all of those.
Actually, they are.
Oh, you think they will?
They're
hiring people?
It's the federal government.
counts.
So you have a line, you will have a line in the reports, the non-visuals, so I can share this with you later if you want, but it's your instruction costs by building. And then your other instruction costs. And in conversation with the Department of Education, a lot of schools lobbied for that because they would say, let me use Maplewood, for example, has life skills in it. And so they have a higher cost for that building with all of the additional instructional assistants. So in addition to everything being identified by building, special ed, I also have a separate number that identifies it to put it in other instruction. So when they're looking at the instruction line, I've segregated out our special education to go into a separate line number. Then they also look at the operational expenses. And then they'll be able to look at, well, in Fayette County, they spend, $7,300 per student. In total, this much was instruction. And in Seattle, Washington, they spend this by every school district. I'm not sure that the federal government has identified any factor related to the economics of that area. Costs in a New York City school are going to be higher than here.
Yeah.
That's here and there.
Okay. All right, well, any other discussion?
I'd just like to mention our pension debt service, final payment next year. I mean, there are government entities and corporations across this nation that could go belly up because they can't fund that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Big deal, celebration.
I'd just like to congratulate Janie. She does a fabulous job, and we know that Fayette County School Corporation is so fiscally responsible. And when we go to our patrons and they say, well, you're spending all this money, well, we can show you exactly where it is and how it's benefiting the kids. And that is so important because, if they're gonna pay for it, they want to get the best bang for their buck. And the way you do this, it makes it so much easier. We can say, here, this is where we spent that. This is how it's being spent, and that's just such a wonderful asset to us at this point in time to have somebody as diligent as you taking care of our money. It makes it a whole lot easier for the rest of us to do our job. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And I agree, and I think the last thing I'll leave you with, and then as you think about this energy savings piece with solar energy, it looks like the 30th, next Thursday works for us, 6 p.m. And so we'll double check and then get that notice out. We're looking ahead to beyond, I said that jokingly.
That was a Thursday, wasn't it?
Thursday, yes, next Thursday. This energy savings piece with solar energy will outlive us here in our tenure, more than likely, but steps like that throughout the years in Fayette County schools, have positioned us to be in really strong financial shape, and that's, I think, because of great planning and leadership from the board and administration in past years. So we want to continue in that. So we're looking ahead, how can we position ourselves, not knowing what's going to happen down the road with state funding, property tax values. This is a way where we could see a savings in 30 years of potentially $5 million. That's the bottom line to think
As
about.
opposed to still paying off a debt 23 years later.
Yeah, and that's the other side of it, but we have some ideas to think about and work on, so thank you.
Okay, I need to see if Ryan or Nick can be here. if the public has questions?
Yes, I
Or-
think we would
Or
like
did
to.
you just want to talk about the property piece?
No, I
Or-
think they
wanna
need to
make
be
sure
here
that
so that
I-
people
I
can.
provide what you want.
Right, I think
Yeah.
those folks, if they can
Yeah.
be here,
I don't know.
right, let's- if they
It is
can,
short
or if they can
notice.
send somebody, that would be great.
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be a really important piece if they could, to just,
For any questions we haven't come up
for any
with.
questions.
Or if one of them could be here. They don't both have to be
Because
here.
this is an awful lot of information to absorb at once.
Yeah, and it's very fast, and it's difficult to make a decision this important so quick, so.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Warren. Do I have a second? Thank you, Andy. All those in favor signify by raising a hand. Post same sign.